Wavelength.
Just because we're doing our lectures online doesn't mean that we need to then retreat and make life, all about being alone.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide.
I think there's not enough knowledge around the severity of the long-term impacts that a concussion can give you, and it's not really educated enough.
You should be having.
The minimum job search requirements is definitely problematic, and it is up to a computer to decide whether you receive your payments each month.
This is Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. I'm your host, Cass, and tonight I have Izzy joining me.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate
thanks for having me again.
You have a very exciting announcement, don't you?
I do. So today is my last show on Wavelength. I got a gig up in New South Wales, which is
Incredible.
So exciting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you. That's really great.
Thank you. I'm a bit sad because I feel like I haven't been on Wavelength for long, but since joining, I've been in every single episode.
Yes, you have. And also, Izzy's on the news team, so you would have heard her voice on a Tuesday morning. You definitely would have heard Izzy or seen her on our socials as well. So she's around.
I've loved being here. I wouldn't have had the opportunities if I hadn't been at Fresh. So yeah. I give all my love and gratitude to every single person here at Fresh.
Oh my God, fantastic.
Now, before we do jump in, we do have to acknowledge that we are recording Wavelength on the land of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pay respect to elders past and present.
We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they're in continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today, and we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations.
Now, it is another cold night here in Adelaide, but let's strap in for a fantastic episode.
Yes, we do have a lot in store, and the Olympics started just over a week ago. It's probably been blowing up your screens. Go Aussies, and we are killing it.
To learn a little more, Trevor spoke to Sophie Kinnear from SportSA.
Take it away, Trevor.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
So my name is Sophie Kinnear, and I'm the Communications and Events Officer at SportSA.
What does SportSA do?
So SportSA are the peak body representing and connecting all sports in SA. As an organisation, essentially we strive to inspire South Australians to get into the game. SportSA helps South Australia reach their full potential. Through that, we provide leadership, advocacy and capacity building for South Australian sporting organisations, and this ensures that their voice is heard so that they can have a real impact in the sporting sector.
How does SportSA get involved and support South Australian athletes in the 2024 Paris Olympics?
Mainly through our communications, we've been showcasing all the South Australian athletes who are involved in the 2024 Paris Olympics. This is in the form of advocacy, and that's not only for the athletes, but it's supporting the sporting organisations that they're from as well, and that's so important. So in promoting their achievements and their efforts to the public, it showcases their individual successes, but also the support structures that sporting organisations provide for these athletes. There are South Australian athletes across 12 sports in the 2024 Paris Olympics. SportSA highlighting and supporting these athletes shows junior South Australian athletes that there's a pathway from grassroots to high-level sport.
Within the Paris Olympics, is there anyone who's come through SportSA?
So we're a peak body for members, so we help whole sporting organisations. So, we have Volleyball SA as members, and we've got a few South Australian athletes in Volleyball SA. So we don't have specific athletes who are through SportSA, but so many of the sporting organisations that are members of SportSA have athletes. Athletics, triathlon. We represent a lot of these sports as organisations who have athletes that have headed over to Paris.
Why do you think the 2024 Paris Olympics is important for South Australians to...
So this year has been, we've had a really high number of athletes. I think 10% of the Australian team are from SA, or they are currently located in SA. So that's a really high number of South Australian athletes. And so far we've achieved really high levels of success in these sports. I feel like it's showing that from a reasonably small state that we really can produce such high-level athletes, and it's showing that the small grassroots clubs that we have here can produce athletes that succeed at high international level. Adding on before, it's been so amazing to watch so many South Australian athletes succeed, to be able to have all these athletes showcase that they can come from SA and achieve high levels as the bigger states and also beat some of the bigger countries in the world. It's really amazing. and it gives me so much hope for the future of sporting in the state.
And are there any other comments or statements regarding the 2024 Paris Olympics that you'd like to add?
We do have a few male volleyballers, but no female volleyballers, I don't think. But I think we've got three male volleyballers who, one of them is from SA and the other two reside in SA. I think they attended SAFI.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks so much for that, Trevor and Sophie.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having.
I'm talking with Dr. Ginette Kremmidiotis about the process of egg freezing, what it's all about, all the pros and cons, and why women are deciding to go through this process earlier in life.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
So egg freezing is essentially an IVF cycle without creating embryos. We're finding that there is a market for it at the moment regarding women that either had long-term relationship and not been able to have a family with that particular partner, or single women that haven't found a partner or haven't found the right partner yet, finding that their body clock is running out of time and that they don't want to lose the possibility of having a child later down the track. We look at assessing their fertility and looking at freezing up to 20 eggs, preferably, which is not a 100% guarantee, but will give them a good shot at having a full-term pregnancy. So usually we would do a consultation and arrange some baseline investigations, including blood tests and ultrasounds and so on. We would review them then some weeks later, make sure that all of that was okay, and then consider when they would like to undertake this procedure, what their background fertility status looked like. Would they need 1 cycle or 2 cycles potentially to get the preferred number of 20 eggs in order to give them the best chance later? And the reason we need that many eggs is that often eggs don't thaw so well and don't fertilise so well afterwards. Embryos and sperm often do very well in the freezer, but eggs unfortunately are a little bit more fragile. So we need that many in order to try and guarantee at least 1 pregnancy.
Now, there is a sort of idea that younger women are pursuing desired lifestyles before deciding to have children. What are some of the reasons why women are deciding to freeze their eggs at a younger age?
We get a gamut of anything from younger to older women. So again, it's about lifestyle, and there's certainly been some social changes that have driven the process. So things like finances, housing, getting degrees, careers, all of that underway, and there's more pressure on women in order to undertake those things first, in which case that leaves them then sort of in their often late 30s before they're thinking about having a family. Alternatively, they may have made the decision to have a partner, a long-term partner, and then for some reason that relationship has some hiccups and or become defunct, and so consequently they feel that they are not able to fulfill that dream of a family, so they come looking to preserve their fertility. And there's a small group of those women who have a diagnosis of a cancer or something else whom we see on a regular basis as well, unfortunately, that also want to fertility preserve.
So a patient then would go through this whole entire process. They've spent, let's say, at least around $5,000 with no kind of Medicare rebates, and now they've put their trust and hope in the fact that one day when they're ready, they can use their eggs and potentially fall pregnant. What are the success rates like, and does this particularly depend on the age of the actual frozen egg itself and the patient's fertility body clock? Because I'm assuming there would be that possibility that you might not actually fall pregnant at all. Is that true?
You're quite right. The egg age, or the age that it was taken from the woman, is very important. And so the younger eggs or younger women's eggs are much more robust and healthy and will produce embryos better. However, there may be other reasons for why someone mightn't fall pregnant, so that even if you have good quality embryos and you put them back and everything else looks great and normal and fine, that perhaps they still don't fall pregnant. Things like endometriosis may play a role, and the older you get, of course, then the disease process is more advanced, so therefore that becomes more difficult moving forward. It is multifactorial. I can't tell you that there is a reason, but it's not a 100% guarantee that if you have 20 eggs, you will get a pregnancy. There are a multitude of factors that will have an impact on whether the embryo will implant as well. Currently, we store for 15 years, and I guess that if you were thinking you were doing this at 35, then that would take you to 50. After that time, we wouldn't treat women traditionally anyway. There is a reproductive law that suggests that we wouldn't treat past the average age of normal menopause, which is about 50 to 52, and most people have made a decision in that time about what they want to do.
What could be some of the risks associated with treatment, and what are some other pros and cons when it comes to egg freezing?
We can't deny that this is a surgical procedure. The risks of surgery are certainly going to be there. There's a risk of a sedation anaesthetic, so it's not a full anaesthetic, but there is still risk with anaesthetic. If people have other medical problems, then that certainly has some impact. And are they suitable in our particular unit, or do they need to be seen in a different unit where they have more support anaesthetic-wise? Weight is a big issue. Certainly, if people are well above a BMI of 30 to 35, there are risks associated with that and an anaesthetic. The surgical procedure is not a walk in the park. We have, a sharp instrument going into places that potentially could promote infection or bleeding. Then there's always the side effect of hyperstimulation of ovaries, which is a known side effect of IVF and egg freezing. However, it can, on the rare occasion, leave people quite unwell and in hospital for several days. But we try and do multiple things to mitigate that risk.
Are there any options for counselling and support before, during and after treatment, and how important is this for those going through egg freezing?
Absolutely. So we have a counsellor with our unit, and I think that most units in Adelaide are similar, but we do have a counsellor who can discuss really the pros and cons of undertaking this process, the pros and cons of decision-making around egg freezing, or whether you stay childless or look at other options, maybe adoption or fostering. We do have counselling, and that's a very, very important part. I think that this is not just a medical process. I think that you have to look at the person in a whole, and you have to look at the psychosocial background as well in order to fully assess the patient and see if they're suitable for this to move forward. I just think it's important for women to understand their fertility, and perhaps now we have ways of looking at that earlier in their life before it becomes too late. So I think the question should be asked of the GP, and should there be any hint of any concern, then a further opinion should be sought sooner rather than later, because often we can do things that will help in the future, like egg freezing.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Wow, thanks for that, Izzy and Dr. Ginette Kremmidiotis.
Our text line is open, Adelaide, so send us a message on 0428 927 927 and let us know what you think about the episode so far.
Wavelength.
Just before the break, we spoke to Dr. Ginette Kremmidiotis. If you did miss it, though, check out our podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, or anywhere else that you get your podcasts.
Right now, Liz is talking with People with Disability Australia about the new NDIS proposed ban.
Take it away, Liz.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
How is People with Disability Australia supporting individuals who are affected by this proposed ban?
So sex services is a very broad area. There's been a lot of headlines around prostitution, and that's really missing the crux of the issue, that people with disabilities could have a variety of needs, and sex is a part of the human experience, which has been found by the High Court of Australia.
From your position, why is there a need for the access of sex services through NDIS?
Sex is a basic human right. If your disability impacts with your ability to have that sexual expression in the meaningful way other people do, then it's very important to have access to those services to understand how you might be able to start a family, how you can have a relationship, these kinds of very wholesome goals that most of us aspire to in life.
Have you noticed any misconceptions surrounding people with disabilities accessing sex work services?
There seems to be a misconception around people with disability and sex generally, that we're not sexual beings. People haven't really considered it that way, more with pity, not noticing that you live a full life. You've got two taboo topics clashing here: sex work and sex and disability, which is why this is becoming a huge story when really it's only a tiny component of a change to legislation, which is talking about restricting access to what people with disability can access, and that's not just in relation to sex. They're talking about restricting access to where you can get your support work from, cleaning, gardening, the types of equipment and aids and support people need. I'd like everyone to consider people with disabilities as just like you or someone you love.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, Liz and Marayke Jonkers.
Wavelength.
You're on Wavelength for your Monday night with Cass and Izzy, and right now it is actually my favourite time of the episode. It's heaps good news.
Can't get enough of this. What's going on, Emily?
I know there's gonna be
heaps good news on Wavelength.
To start off tonight, the giant Australian cuttlefish migration is something of a celebration for the town of Whyalla in South Australia, and it is annually celebrated. The Whyalla Cuttlefish Dive Site have had significant changes made to its facilities, which is due to an increased number of visitors. The upgrades were announced in April, and some of the changes include extra parking, a new bathroom, improved changing areas, and catering areas. Up next, the Whyalla Hospital will be undergoing a $15.4 million transformation, which aims to improve its facilities' resources. The changes will involve the expansion of the emergency department and upgrading the high dependency unit. Once the changes start to get underway, the emergency department will have a 70% increase in its treatment bays from 7 to 12. But that's not all. Now is the time for the Murray crayfish to become a successful species once again in South Australia. This comes 1 year on from being reintroduced into the river system, where last year 200 crayfish were released into a secret location in the Riverland. This was an ongoing Nature Glenelg Trust, Murraylands and Riverland Landscape Board project, where 80 more of the species have joined to continue increasing the population. To continue, there has been an amazing sight seen in the waters of Kelledy Bay, which is near Coffin Bay on the beautiful Eyre Peninsula. Thousands of huge bright orange spider crabs were seen all over the water, which left people amazed to witness such a spectacular sight. These crabs are mysterious deep-sea creatures which are important to the ecosystem of the Great Southern Reef. To finish off tonight, dog owners and their furry friends will be able to enjoy a brand new dog park in Woolcroft when it opens in September. This has been a $565,000 project, which will be one to improve the community amenities for dog owners and their four-legged companions. The new dog park will be located at Hurtle John Potter Reserve on the corner of Baines Road and Investigator Drive.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
And that brings us to the end of the show tonight. Thank you so much for listening.
Make sure you're subscribed to the Wavelength podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. You can listen back to our old episodes right now, and tonight's episode will be up soon.
That is officially us for the night. Thank you so much, Izzy. Oh, I can't wait to see what you do.
Oh, I can't wait to come back eventually.
Oh my God,
absolutely.
Anytime. Your microphone is always free.
Wavelength.